This is Mike Tatarski, host of the Vietnam Weekly podcast, coming to you from a windy Ho Chi Minh City. For those interested in wildlife, not to mention wild animals themselves, Vietnam is a tough place. The country is a significant hub in the global illegal wildlife trade, both as a transit point for shipments to other countries like China and for domestic consumption of items like elephant horns and pangolin scales, generally for the traditional medicine trade with no scientific basis for these practices. The global illegal wildlife trade is worth at least $20 billion annually, and the size of wildlife shipments can be mind-boggling. For example, in early 2019, customs officials at a port in Haiphong found about 1.4 tons of pangolin scales and 20 elephant tusks in a container that had arrived from Nigeria. Pangolins, if you haven't seen one before, aren't very big, or around the size of a small dog. So you can imagine how many would have to be poached to produce 1.4 tons of their scales. Perhaps it's not surprising that the pangolin is considered the most trafficked animal in the world. It's also an animal you'll hear more about today. Vietnam's endemic species are trafficked as well. In 2021, 17 live Indo-Chinese tigers were found in 2 houses in Nha An province in the north central region. Tigers are functionally extinct in the wild in Vietnam, with none officially recorded since 2009, according to WWF. But their captive trade, however, has thrived over the years. Another large species is the almost mythical sao la, which hasn't been seen in the wild since 2013 when a camera trap spotted one, though the species hasn't had a confirmed in-person sighting since 1998. Other examples of Vietnam's megafauna have faced even worse fates. The country's last Javan rhinoceros was found killed by poachers in Cat Tien National Park in Dong Nai back in 2010. Wild elephants are holding on, though they face major pressure from habitat loss and are only found in a couple areas of the country. Despite all those very serious issues, pockets of Vietnam remain marvels of biodiversity, much of it seriously endangered. The country, for example, is home to 11 of the rarest primate species in the world, including 5 that are only found here. So what's being done to ensure that the country doesn't lose more of its incredible wildlife? Today's guest is Trung Tran, captive manager of the Cuc Phuong Carnivore and Pangolin Conservation Program for Save Vietnam's Wildlife, or SVW. He's been with SVW since 2017 and is deeply involved in their conservation work, particularly their pangolin and Austin civet captive breeding programs up in Cuc Phuong. SVW is one of a handful of organizations doing really incredible, important work to save what's left of Vietnam's biodiversity, while also trying to fight the international illegal wildlife trade. We discuss SVW's captive breeding programs that I just mentioned, their anti-poaching work, research and monitoring of Vietnam's endangered species, the prominence of pangolins in the illegal wildlife trade, as mentioned, the biggest threats to Vietnam's biodiversity, and what he hopes to see for the country's wildlife in the future. As always, if you have any comments, feedback, or guest ideas, get in touch at matatarski@gmail.com. Let's get to my conversation with Trung. Trung, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. Happy to. So just to start, could you maybe introduce Save or SVW and kind of what you guys focus on?
Okay, Save Vietnam's Wildlife is a local organization in Vietnam dedicated to non-profit conservation efforts. So we are focusing on wildlife and ecosystem restoration. So Save Vietnam Wildlife we established in 2014, and we've been running a long-term conservation program, and we are focusing on 6 areas. The first one is wildlife rescue and rehabilitation. Currently, we are working with 2 national to run 2 wildlife rescue centers in Vietnam. So we rescue the animals from illegal wildlife trade and from local community, and then bring them to our rescue center. We provide them medical treatment and rehabilitation. And when they're ready, we will bring them back to the wild. And then the second activities is conservation breeding programs. Some species, they already extinct in the wild, or their population in the wild is so small. so cannot recover by themselves. So we will create their breeding program in captivity to create the large enough their population in captivity first before bring them back to the wild to recover their population in the wild. And the next activity is anti-poaching and laws enforcement support. So we create the anti-poaching team who working with the ranger in different national park to improve the work from the rangers, and we apply the new technology, so improve the work for the ranger who do the patrol in the forest to our goal is to disrupt illegal wildlife trade networks and push for stronger wildlife protections. And we also have education activities. We run educational programs and awareness campaigns to highlight the importance of wildlife conservation. By engaging communities, schools, and local leaders, we aim to build a culture of respect and protection for wildlife. And the last one is we do some research activities. We have a research team who do research in the field. We conduct scientific research to better understand the needs of endangered species and the challenges they face. Our monitoring pangolins track the health and population of species, which helps inform our conservation strategies. Yes, that is some short introduction to organization.
Okay, great. I mean, yeah, a lot of really important, amazing work, which some of which we'll talk about in more detail. You mentioned the captive breeding. What kind of species are you working with captive breeding program?
So at the moment, we are focusing on two species. They are Austin civet and Chinese pangolin. Both are really rare in the wild in Vietnam now, and also their contribution range is so quite small, and that's why we are decided to do the breeding program with this species. The goal is to build to create the successful model with through this species first before we expand to other species in the futures.
Okay, and you mentioned pangolins. I know, they're for listeners who might not know that there's different species, but I think they're found across parts of Southeast Asia and Africa as well. And I think, if I remember correctly, it is like the most trafficked animal in the world. Why are pangolins such a big part of the wildlife trade?
So there are some reasons the pangolins are heavily targeted in wildlife trade. Yes, and the first one is like a traditional medicine. You may hear about that. So in many Asian countries, pangolins are believed to have medicinal benefits. Their scales are used in traditional medicine despite no scientific proof of their effectiveness. So this is high demand makes pangolin a prime target for poachers and traffickers. And the second one is status symbol. Pangolins are and their part are sometimes seen luxuries items or status symbols. Their rarity and the belief in their health benefits boost their market value, fueling their illegal trade. And also, the meat consumption. Meat consumption is also many people want to have a hunt and trade the pangolin for meat consumption.
And then beyond, not just the pangolin, what are the biggest threats facing wildlife in Vietnam, overall?
Vietnam's wildlife is facing some serious threats that impact its incredible biodiversity. So the first one is habitat destruction. So the rapid urbanization, deforestation, or agriculture expansion are major problems. As we clear forests and wetlands for development and farming, many species lose their homes, leading to declines and in their population and even extinction risks. And illegal wildlife trade, Vietnam is a major hub for illegal wildlife trade. Many species like pangolin, tigers, and various birds are trafficked for their body part, which are used in traditional medicine and status symbols or as pests. Um, One of the really big issues in the forest Vietnam is now is like overhunting, the illegal hunting. Many species are hunted illegally for their meat, trophies, or body part. This illegal hunting often target endangered species and leads the surf population declines. You know, we have our anti-poaching team who patrol in the forest to collect and to destroy the illegal trap in the forest. It's really sad. Sometimes we saw a long line of trap in the forest, but the problem is when the local people go to the forest, they set the trap, a long line of traps there, sometimes like 100 meter long of traps there. And then whenever they caught one animals like pangolin, they can sell with high cost to get the money, and then they leave all the other traps in the forest, and sometimes they busy with their other work outside, or they sometimes they don't care about the other trap in the forest. And we saw many animals die in the forest, like without bring outside. Yeah, that is really big issues with for wildlife in forest in Vietnam.
And so obviously, as you know, SVW is working on these issues. There's other conservation organizations. What's being done, across Vietnam to try to work on some of these problems?
Vietnam is taking several important steps to tackle these threats facing its wildlife through various national initiatives and policies. The legislation and policy, so Vietnam has put in place several laws to protect wildlife, like the law on forest protection and department, or the law on biodiversity. The law is like regulate hunting, trade, and habitat destruction. And also we also create the national action plans. The government has created action plans for specific species and ecosystems, such as the National Action Plan for the Conservation of Endangered Species and the National Strategy on Biodiversity to 2020, with the version to extend into 2030. And the second one is we established the protected areas. It's it's also the way to like tackle the issues. So creation the protected areas. Vietnam has established many national parks, many natural reserves, and conservation areas to safeguard critical habitats and species. For example, some really big national park, and they have a long history, like Cúc Phương National Park, Phong Nha Kẻ Bàng National Park, or Cát Thiên National Park. Yeah, that's also the way to like improve the way we protect wildlife. And the other thing is a conservation program. The community, we also engage the community involved into the conservation work. So various program engage local people in conservation efforts, promising sustainable practice and offering alternative livelihood to reduce reliance on natural resources. And many NGOs in Vietnam now is working for conservation work, like say Vietnam's Wildlife or Worldwide Fund for Nature and the Vietnam Wildlife Conservation Center.
And speaking of conservation program. So you're involved with the carnivore and pangolins conservation program at SVW. What is that program exactly?
About our programs, we have carnivore and pangolin conservation program in Cúc Phước. This is a collaborative initiative between Cúc Phước National Park and Save Vietnam's Wildlife. So our mission is involves rescuing carnivores and pangolins from illegal wildlife trade and local community. Once rescued, these animals receive expert care from our dedicated team of animal care specialists and veterinarians at our rescue center. So we provide a medical treatment and rehabilitation to ensure their health before bring them back to their real home. Additionally, we also run, as I told you already, so we run a conservation breeding program in here. So we
Right.
focus on two species, Austin civet and Chinese pangolin. And since 2014, we
Mhm.
have rescued nearly 2,000 animals across the various species. And 60% of them already successfully rehabilitated and released back to the wild.
Wow, that's a big number. So when you rescue an animal, what are what steps are taken to try to rehabilitate it and then release it?
So, most of the animals we rescue are from illegal wildlife trade. So they come to the rescue center with poor condition. Many animals have an injury, like a missing a part of their body by traps and guns. So when we bring the animal to the rescue center, so we have in rescue center we have different area to keep the animals, but all the animals need to stay in quarantine area at least for 30 days. So the goal is to make sure they are healthy and they don't have any diseases to transfer to all the animals in our rescue center. And then in the quarantine area, they will receive the care from our vet team, our captive team. So after 1 month, we will do the health check, and if they are healthy and still wild, so we will bring them straight back to the wild. But some animals need more time to rehabilitate here, so we have a semi-wild area. Semi-wild areas, the goal is to train them to maintain their natural behavior, to train them to increase their survival rate before bring them back to the wild. But some animals cannot make that. Some animals like missing a part of their bodies, or some animals being kept like a pet for long times, so they lose most of their natural behaviors. They cannot release back into the wild. So we have a separate programs. It's called education area. So we have some long-term enclosures there to keep the animals who cannot release back into the wild for education purposes. So each animal they have their own story. So the goal is to tell the story for visitor come here to raise awareness about the wildlife, about the nature.
And then with the captive breeding, how is that? Has that been successful so far, or how is the progress on that?
With breeding programs, so we have two species with Chinese pangolins. So we just start last 2 years. So it's just at the beginning. So we haven't have any a successful yet. Yeah, because of we limitation of the Chinese pangolin individuals. Yeah, so we need more animals for that breeding program. But with Austin civet, the program is already started here for really long time. But we just have some successful. Last year, we have 10 kittens born in our facilities here. So really great new stuff. So and we hopefully so in the next 3 to 4 years we can bring them back to the wild. So our goal is with Austin civet we will raise their population in captivity at least 40 individuals, 20 pairs, and grow sustainable and growing well in captivity. And then we will make the plan to bring them back to the wild to recover their population in the wild.
And speaking of, releasing animals, you mentioned that uh, you'll soon be going to Cat Tien National Park, which is near Ho Chi Minh City, to release animals. Can you share what the animals are, or how does it work when you do a release like this?
Okay, so we are planning to release 10 pangolins, 10 Sanda pangolins into to Cat Tien National Park. As you know, the Sanda pangolin they contribute from the central to south Vietnam, not in the north Vietnam. So that was we have to bring them there. And before that, we have our research team who do the research in the field to make sure the habitat is suitable for this species and also safe for this species from hunter. And 10 animals we released there, we have a six pangolins with transmitters, so GPS transmitters, so we're able to monitor them after releasing. So we have a monitor program, animal monitoring program after releasing. So after release the animal there, we have our anti-poaching team and our research team will follow the animals in the forest to see how they behave, how they survive after release in the forest. Yeah, to to measurement the success from our team, our rescue team. How many percent of the animals after release survive, and from that we can learn from that to improve the work in captivity.
So we talked about the pangolin and how it's trafficked so much. What are some of the other species of animal that are very heavily trafficked in Vietnam?
Beside pangolins, so in Vietnam, I see several other species are commonly trafficked, tigers, the tiger parts, such as bones, claws, and skin, are highly valued in traditional medicine and as the luxury items. And despite international bans on the trade of tiger products, illegal trafficking persists. The next one is bears. Bear bites is also is quite common in Vietnam. Extracted from live bears in captivity, in use in traditional medicine. The illegal trade in bear bile and bear parts is a significant problem, with many bears kept in appalling condition on bile farms. And other species like slow lories, birds, sea turtles, and some primate species also is common on trafficked in Vietnam.
And is all of that, are they being trafficked for consumption in Vietnam, or is it going to other countries, or some mix of both of those?
Both. Yeah, some some will use it in Vietnam, some will transfer to other countries like China. I know in the past we like before 2020 we rescue many pangolins each year, and from 300 pangolins each year come to our rescue center, and most of them is from traffic from other countries like Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and some really big case 100 animals or over 100 animals at the same time. And then from the information from the police, from trader, and then I know it's they will trade to China. So on the way to Vietnam, So the Vietnam government confiscated the animals and transferred to us.
And you've mentioned traditional medicine a few times. I know that's kind of one of the causes of a lot of wildlife trafficking. But the young Vietnamese people I know don't really seem to follow a lot of that. They seem to recognize that this is doing harm to wildlife, to the natural environment. So how have you seen attitudes towards wildlife in Vietnam change over time?
Yeah, the good questions is the attitude. So the attitude toward wildlife in Vietnam have improved a lot recently. So like more awareness, the public understanding, like people are more aware of the need to protect wildlife. So especially from the young people. And at the beginning, I started the work at Save Vietnam Wildlife in 2017. So at that time, so I now see many young people care about the conservation, care about the wildlife. But nowadays, so I regularly receive a call from the young people. They report like a crime, the illegal trade, or they contact me to come to do the volunteer work at our rescue center to help the work here. Yeah, so it's very good news. The attitudes from the young generations.
I hope things continue to improve because I know sometimes reading the news can be a little bit upsetting. I think it's been 10 years ago or so, the last rhino in the country was poached. I know there's just frequently there's stories about tigers being trafficked and those sorts of things. It's a bit a bit depressing sometimes. Yeah, but attitudes are changing at least. So what do you hope the future looks like for wildlife in Vietnam?
The future for wildlife in Vietnam is looks bright if we keep up with the current conservation efforts. I really hope to see a thriving ecosystem here, a healthy habitats, forests, wetlands, and marine areas will be well preserved, providing safe homes for many species, and stopping deforestation and habitat loss will create stronger ecosystem. The second one I hope to see is recovering wildlife, more wildlife recover in their home, like a species like big cats, pangolins, primates will back due to effective conservation and anti-poaching efforts. And Vietnam deserve wildlife will be preserved and even grow thanks to successful breeding and rewilding programs. And the next one is like a sustainable practices, economic development will be balanced with conservation using sustainable method in farming, forestry, and tourism to protect wildlife and support local communities. And the government will be back environmental conservation and sustainable practice will be widely adopted. Yeah, that's something I hope for the Vietnam wildlife in the future.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. Hope so too. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you said you've been sick for a few days, so I hope you feel better. But I guess last thing, if listeners want to support SVW, whether they're in Vietnam or overseas, how can they do that?
Okay, so we have a website. We have a website, svw.com. So welcome everyone to come to look at our activities there. And then we also have a volunteer program that introduce the volunteer program there. So everyone can check and see if they're interested. They can register us or make the donation from our website, and or can contact us through our email inform.svw.com, and then we'll ask any person, any things you want to do to help our work in Vietnam.
Okay, well that's great. Well, Chung, thank you so much for joining me. I've never been to Kook Phong National Park. I hope to visit someday and maybe can meet you there. But really impressed by all of the work that SVW does and the other conservation organizations here in Vietnam. I know it's not easy, so thank you again for taking some time.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. So if you have time, so when you plan to visit Cúc Phương, so please feel free to contact me. So I will be a tour guide to take you around here to introduce about our work and like in the forest. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. Looking forward to it. That's it for this episode of the Vietnam Weekly podcast. Connect with Vietnam Weekly on Threads, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Thank you so much for listening, and please rate or review the show on your preferred podcast platform. See you next week.